Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University, here to talk today about biographical writing, give you some tips and some specific strategies. A lot of this stuff is coming from the book I'm working on, Being and Becoming Teachers of Writing. That will be published in 2024 by Routledge. Also, if you go to my website, you get lots of stuff, free stuff. I don't charge for anything. YouTube's, LinkedIn, podcasts, etc. The Reading Instruction Show, my website, has lots of stuff related to reading and writing, so you can find that there. All right, we teach the process to develop the skill. If we want students to become better writers and thinkers, writing and thinking go hand in hand, we must teach the process. At every age, kindergarten through graduate school. The process is this: the pre-draft, what you do, generating ideas, organizing ideas, collecting data. What you do before writing is just as important as what you do during the writing. The draft, the first attempt to get those ideas on paper, it's like a potter throwing a blob of clay on the potter's wheel so you can begin to shape it. The draft. Your draft should be horrible. It should be terrible. That's what a draft is. People that try to get it just right in the draft get all stuck up. Revision is at the heart of the writing process. To revision, seeing again and again and again and again, going back, reshaping. That's like taking that blob of clay and shaping, taking clay off, putting clay on, moving passages around. Editing is where you look for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. You only edit on step 4. People that try to edit in steps 1, 2, 3 impede and stymie the writing process. And then, of course, sharing, that is sharing your work with others. Publishing, sharing with real people, develops a sense of audience. Now, most writing activities you do in your classroom are pre-write, write, and share. A lot of quick and easy 2 to 10 minute sorts of things. Pre-write, write a draft, share in a small group. And you can see here, pre-write, draft, and share in small group. Many of the writing activities are that. Now, to share, it's best and easiest in your group. Read your paper or share your ideas with the paper. And again, this develops a sense of audience, makes the writing come alive. Or turn to a partner and read what you wrote today. Or partner swap and write their ideas right on it. Or an author's chair where once a day you may choose one person to share his or her work up in front. But these are all different ways to share. Drafts then are put in a file folder or notebook. They shouldn't be put in students' desks because once they're in the desks, you never know what will happen to them. I like the file folder. You can see it right there because it becomes a sacred space. So after writing, they put all their drafts there. And then you, as the good teacher that you are, can do a lot of formative assessment, lot of documentation. Just look in the file folders and document writing progress. Only about 1 out of 5, says Donald Graves, are hot topics. Hot topics are taken to the revision process. Just like real writers in the real world, not everything you start needs to or should be taken to the revision process. Sharing with others develops a sense of community, helps you understand others, real human beings, sharing real ideas from their real lives. That is always a good thing. Sharing over time develops community. And the types of things you're willing to share, sometimes you have to develop community before you share as well. So it's all a part of creating that safe, inclusive classroom space. Like anything, playing the piano, playing tennis, playing soccer, learning to write, you need to practice every day. We should call it writing practice instead of writing class or language arts class. And the last thing I want to say, a lot of the strategies you'll encounter in my book and others is about generating ideas, a variety of ideas. Here's why that's important. Even bad and kooky ideas are important. Ideas beget more ideas. The human brain is designed so it naturally associates with other things. When I say the word cat, your brain automatically goes, oh, paws, furry, pet, associating with all these things. So if you generate a lot of ideas, you hear different ideas, see different ideas, it begets more ideas. And more ideas, it makes it easier to write, and you have better things to write about. All right, we're going to get to biographical writing, but I want to put it in the context of a K-12 curriculum. There are 6 types of writing that should be in a K-12 curriculum. Common Core State Standards only identify 3. They are 3 short. Persuasive writing, absolutely, the type of writing used to make a case for something or to construct an argument. That's important. Narrative writing, used to describe incidents, events, or tell a story. The author becomes a narrator. This is biographical writing, and this is the topic of today's video. So narrative writing is the larger category, and biographical writing or biographies is a form of narrative writing. Expository writing, used to explain or describe something, to communicate knowledge, like a textbook, a report, a paper. Inquiry writing. This is the type of writing used in science to describe all phases of the inquiry process. Inquiry is a process of asking a question, gathering data, and then using the data to answer that question. And then the arts. This type of writing is used to create art. Art seeks to evoke a variety of responses, including aesthetic, emotional, social, and intellectual responses. Poetry, drama, scripts, song lyrics, comedy monologues. These are all types of writing that could be found in the arts. And then communication, personal writing, email, letters, memos, newsletters, personal letters. Remember those things? Blogs, Facebooks, podcasts, digital media. These are all types of personal communication. So 6 types of writing should be included in a K-12 curriculum if we are preparing them to exist in the real world, and hopefully we are. Not to exist in a school setting, but to exist in the real world. So let's define narrative writing, of which biographical writing is part. Description of events and experiences in which the writer is narrating, telling a story, and this can be real or imagined. Here, the writer typically includes real and imagined experiences using effective techniques, looks to use descriptive details and a clear sequence of events, real or imaginative. And here's where adjectives and dialogue, simile, metaphors, sequence, story grammars, these are all elements used in narrative writing and used in biographies or biographical writing. These are all elements, techniques, part of making effective biographical writing. Now, a trip into point of view before we get into biographical writing. This is an important part of biographical writing. Who is telling the story? Will it be a particular person, a faceless subjective voice hovering in space, or will it be the writer? The point of view determines the pronouns used. A pronoun is something that takes the place of a noun. For example, Polly runs fast. Polly is a great soccer player. Polly runs fast. She is a great soccer player. She takes the place of Polly. She is a pronoun. Now you have 3 choices in point of view or point of view narratives. First person, describing events through your eyes. I, me, we, us, traditionally used in autobiographies, personal narratives, fiction, and memoirs. And these are all a subset of biographies and narrative writing. For example, when I am teaching writing, I always give my students plenty of thinking time. I give my students. I spent the first 28 years of my writing life hiding behind my third-person voice like a timid little mouse. There is my simile and my adjectives. When I could finally bring myself into my writing, I felt liberated. First person, told through my eyes. Second person, you address the reader directly. Here, you break through the wall of objectivity slightly and address the reader using you and your pronouns. Often this is used when describing things or explaining things. When you are teaching writing, give your students plenty of thinking time. You will find that this is the point of view most often used in this book. That's a passage actually taken from the book I'm working on. If you were to encounter the little bald man in his office, you'd see him joyfully writing in the first person. You break through the wall of objectivity and address the reader directly. Third person, the writer takes him or herself completely out of the writing. Personal pronouns are strictly prohibitive in order to preserve the illusion of total objectivity. And this is the type of writing used in formal academic writing, usually written in the third person, also used with biographies, and sometimes used with fiction. She, he, her, him. When teaching writing, give students sufficient time of sufficient thinking time. Of doesn't belong there. The professor was writing in the first person. This made him happy. No personal pronouns there. Third person. And you see it again. First person, your eyes. Second person, addressing the reader. Third person, totally objective. What does this have to do with anything? Well, there's 6 types of narrative writing. Biographies describing the lives of people, and this is the focus of this one. This is usually written in the third person, involves some form of research. Accuracy and chronology are considered to be important. And again, usually written in the third person, she, her, him, all right? Usually. Autobiographies describing his or her life, written usually in the first person. It's an extended personal narrative, and chronological order is important usually. Sometimes you go back and forth, but here's where you use adjectives, dialogues, metaphors, simile to make the writing come to life, to create a movie in the reader's head. Personal narrative, similar to an autobiography, except the personal narrative describes events that have happened to the writer, usually just shorter pieces of one's life, episodes. This often includes dialogue, often is written in the first person, and you have a rich description of people and places. The personal narrative. Memoirs are memories. Usually you have older students doing this, but you can explore this. Memories from episodes in the writer's life, described from that person's point of view. That person interprets the life event. So it doesn't have to be in chronological order. And interpretation, it doesn't actually have to be factual. A memoir, we're not so worried about that. Again, it's a person's interpretation of the memories that they have. And then creative writing can include a variety of genre, fantasy, creative fiction, science. You're telling a story here, all part of narrative writing. Rich descriptions, adjectives. You're creating a movie in the reader's head again. And the purpose of this type of writing is to entertain, inform, and inspire. These are like great books that we read, movies that we watch, poems, and other things. And then news story is a type of narrative writing because you're describing events. Information about events that have occurred or are occurring. It's a narrative form. Accuracy, chronology, precision of words are all important. Objective third-person verse point of view is usually used here. All right. 6 types of narrative writing. But let's look at the big picture, shall we? Most of us in our real lives will never have a need for narrative writing outside an educational setting, unless we're famous people writing in our memoir, novelists, obituary writers, screenwriters. Most of us will never have a need to use most forms of narrative writing in the real world. Most of us will never have a use for this type of writing, the kind of skills associated with this. But this kind of writing does enhance the language arts. We see the impact of words and sentences and the process transfers. So why do we include narrative writing and biographical writing in a curriculum? Why, if we never use it in our real world lives? And I kind of answered this already. The 5-step writing process is germane to any type of writing. It's the process that transfers to all types of writing you'll use in your personal and professional life. Once the students learn the process, it can be transferred to any type of writing product. And students are able to see the impact of individual words on the reader with narrative writing, with biographical and autobiographical writing. This helps the reader to become more precise with their word selection. So again, the skills learned about word choice and sentence construction transfer to any type of writing. Narrative writing. It enhances, it puts the art back in language arts. And why do we have art of any kind? The arts are another way of seeing and being in the world. They communicate things. Art does that descriptions cannot. It goes places. It goes to the corners of our souls, and it helps us understand ourselves and others. It communicates in a way that non-art cannot. And it humanizes learning. Narratives, especially biographies. Biographies can be used to enhance learning in all subject areas. Human beings best learn through stories. And think about this. Would you want to read a report on grain exports from Bolivia? Or would you like to read about someone's life? Students are more motivated to write and to read narrative texts. Human beings like to write stories. Human beings like to read and listen to stories. We go to movies to see and listen to stories. We read books to see and listen to stories. And narrative writing, biographies, and autobiographies can be used to help us understand ourselves, part of identity formation. Autobiographies, to better understand oneself and others in the context of their lives, and to see oneself in a greater context. So these can be used to facilitate identity formation. Powerful tools in culturally responsive teaching as well. So let's get to some activities. 4 activities for biographies. Biographies are usually written about famous persons, important characters from history or current events, or characters found in books or movies. So the first activity is the Oprah interview. Here the writer does research on a particular person and takes on the persona of that person. An interview is conducted like a guest on a TV interview show. One student takes on the Oprah role and prepares an interview and asks follow-up questions. Preparing the interview ahead of time is important. Now, if the guest doesn't know the answer, they should be encouraged to think in terms of that person, to use their knowledge and to respond to the questions as best they can. With the questions in mind, this helps to prepare for the interview. The hot seat, this is another one you may want to try. It's kind of like a press conference, and people should volunteer for this. Again, the researcher of a biography takes on the persona of the person and volunteers to sit in the hot seat in front of the class. And students can ask any question like a press conference of that famous person. And again, the writer is encouraged to use their knowledge and answer the questions as best as they can if they don't know the answer. Dialogue is fun. You can do this in pairs to create, but you take on the persona of a famous person and another person, either real or imaginary. And in pairs, you can actually have the dialogue and have the conversation and write it out. And it's okay to get silly because this helps you use real life facts to understand. For example, in my book, I'm writing about John Adams, who was the second president of the United States. Andy, you silly little bald man, why are you including me in this ridiculous book of yours? I always thought you were an interesting character. Interesting? What makes you think I was interesting? Well, you were the second president of the United States. Yes, yes, I know that, but I lost my re-election to that detestable Thomas Jefferson. Lots of people lose re-elections to be president of the United States. Oh, really? Well, maybe not lots, but you get the idea. You're creating dialogue and you're using information from the person's lives. You get the idea. It's okay to be silly because they're still rooted in historical fact, and utilize the 5-step writing process. And this can be a fun and interesting way to learn about history and current events and at the same time practice writing skills. Fun is okay. And then simulated journal entries. Again, here the writer takes on the role of their biography subject and creates journal entries from the point of view of that subject. That famous person, what kind of journal entry will that person write this day? Activities all related to biographies. Biographies are usually done on famous or historical people. All right, 5 activities for autobiographies or personal narratives. The first one, another character. Students describe an event or episode from their lives that's written from the perspective of another person or character in that scene, using the first person narrative. So someone involved in an episode that I was in, I'd write it from Sam, and Sam would say, oh yes, I saw Andy come in here and Andy this. I was thinking, all right, interesting activity. Third person narrative. The writer describes an event or episode from their lives using the objective third person narrative, no personal pronouns whatsoever. Future self. Starting at some point in the future, 1 year, 5, 10, etc., students describe events and episodes from an imaginary life of theirs. Get some thinking about the future. Past life, students go back in time to describe events or episodes with a different ending. This is where you use creative writing. And then parallel universe. The writer describes events or episodes using creative writing to insert imaginary characters and fictitious events. The writer lies, and good writers are able to do that. All right, some activities to use with biographical writing. I included autobiographical writing here and personal narratives.